So it's no secret, based on how long ago my last episode was, that I am currently starved for stream of consciousness topics. Everything I could find interesting I have either already covered or I have yet to find it interesting, so in a fit of desperation I just googled thought experiments and wondered if parsing those out would be something worth listening to. I found a site that lists 7 of them, and we're going to go through 2 in this episode and see just how deep we can delve into the depths of depth. This first one is a concept I've already discussed before without realizing it, but in a different scenario, composed by Donald Davidson in 1987 called Swamp Man. It reads like this. Suppose a man is out for a walk one day when a bolt of lightning disintegrates him. Simultaneously, a bolt of lightning strikes a marsh and causes a bunch of molecules to spontaneously rearrange into the same pattern that constituted that man a few moments ago. This Swamp Man has an exact copy of the brain, memories, patterns of behavior as he did. It goes about its day, works, interacts with the man's friends, and is otherwise indistinguishable from him. The question: is the Swamp Man the same person as the disintegrated fellow? So I don't know why this dude conceptualized this in the random-ass caveman way that he did, talking about, oh, what if lightning destroyed a dude and then another lightning built him again somehow, when he could have tied it to the very well-established concept of teleportation. Star Trek was a thing 20 years before this was written, unless he was living under a rock at Walden Pond his whole life. I think he's heard of it. And even then it was probably a very well-traveled idea by itself. It doesn't really matter, but it would sound less ridiculous. Also, why a marsh? Does he know something about marshes that I don't? Entirely possible, but the whole notion of marshes and the title of Swamp Man just makes me think this is happening to Shrek. What if Shrek died and a copy of him became Shrek 2, and then the copy died and another copy became Shrek the Third? Now, these thought experiments, as presented on the site, also state afterwards what the actual person who wrote it thought and some general logic associated with it, so I've tried not to spoil myself on what conclusions they drew before I get my own thoughts going. To answer the question, is the Swamp Man the same person as the disintegrated fellow, I think it's the same to everyone except the disintegrated fellow, because that dude is dead. The original man is nothing but powder on the marshy floor. He will never live again. His consciousness is not jumping into the body of the Swamp Man like it's Zero-Time Dilemma out here, although that would be nice. But there's a few ways you can think about the quote-unquote objective nature of sameness, like which differences qualify as him no longer being the same man. The Swamp Man may have the same brain, memory, and behavior as the dead man, but one thing it won't have is the experience of having been electrocuted and killed. These aren't the same molecules rebuilding their initial design, which I guess does make this scenario different from the idea of certain kinds of teleportation. These are different molecules in a whole other area, rearranging themselves in what pretty much has to be an absolutely freak random accident, as unlikely as the Big Bang itself, like how it just so happened to create the exact precise multitude of conditions for life on Earth to survive and thrive. These new separate molecules would not have a memory of having been instantly vaporized because they'd be dead before they knew they were dead. The Swamp Man is a clone with a few seconds of missing data, or more, depending on how long it actually took to be created again. But even if all its friends and family and coworkers can't tell the difference, the incinerated original blueprint is the smoking gun. On the other hand, life can only be experienced through individual perception. If this dude's wife spends the rest of her days with the Swamp Man, never noticing a difference because no perceivable one exists to notice, then to her it's the same man, and to her is the only relevant classification. She also can't see or experience its memory gap to confirm there's something different going on, so that's irrelevant too. It's like if you took a blind man to a room and tried to show him a hologram of a tree. You can say, there is a hologram of a tree right here. You can't hear it, smell it, or touch it, but you can see it. Whereas the blind man can't hear it, smell it, touch it, or see it, so while to you it's very clear that a hologram of a tree is indeed in the room, the blind dude has no way to perceive it, so it doesn't exist to him. To him, the room is the same with or without the hologram of the tree. From the original disintegrated man's perspective, I would be pretty annoyed if I died and went to heaven or hell or purgatory or the bathroom or wherever and looked back on Earth and saw an exact replica of myself being treated as if it was the same as me. If my consciousness persisted after death to where I could see this happen, I would know the truth that this is not the same man as me, because here I am dead as a doornail getting jealous watching my wife bang my clone later like nothing's wrong. This is why I would not trust teleportation that de-atomizes you and respawns you in another location. You died during that process. You are gone. You were replaced. The new you is an imposter while your original id languishes in the underworld or just shuts off completely like a dead battery. If I'm going to get teleportation powers, I want the kind that Magic has, the Marvel character, who uses her sword to cut open dimensional rifts so you can just walk a few steps through space to get from one side of the Earth to the other. Don't fuck with my molecules, bro. So now I've looked at the part where it says what Davidson's own conclusion was, and he says that they are not the same person because they don't share casual history. The swamp man might remember the friends of the disintegrated man, but he has never actually seen them before. This is an objective difference, but one that ultimately doesn't actually change anything practically, so you might just say, who cares? Like, he's still going to interact with them the same way anyway. But okay, that was one of 7 thought experiments. Let's move on to the next one, which, much to everyone's delight, is a metaphor for abortion. This one written by Judith Thompson in a 1971 essay. You may ask how I know it's a metaphor for abortion. Well, it's because the essay is called A Defense of Abortion. The thought experiment itself is referred to as Thompson's violinist, though. Here it is. You wake up in the morning and find yourself back to back in bed with an unconscious violinist some night. A famous unconscious violinist. He has been found to have a fatal kidney ailment, and the Society of Music Lovers has canvassed all the available medical records and found that you alone have the right blood type to help. They have therefore kidnapped you, and last night the violinist's circulatory system was plugged into yours so that your kidneys can be used to extract poisons from his blood as well as your own. If he is unplugged from you now, he will die, but in 9 months he will have recovered from his ailment and can safely be unplugged from you. Question: are you obligated to keep the musician alive, or do you cut him loose and let him die because you want to? Let me just say off the top that as an allegory for the average abortion, this shit sucks. There are several aspects to this that would completely misrepresent the conundrum of an actual abortion, unless it's only meant to justify abortion after there's been a rape, because pretty much everything in this scenario happens against your will and paints you as a victim of unforeseen circumstance, when in reality there are obviously multiple ways to not get pregnant if you don't want to that are entirely within your control. This was written 2 years before Roe v. Wade was established to make excessive state-regulated abortion restrictions unconstitutional, which, as many people know, was recently overturned, so now we're back to the individual states deciding how excessive they feel like being, if at all. Let's dig into the meat of this, though. A relatively quick answer that many might arrive at is to say no, you are absolutely not obligated to keep a musician you've never even met, although you might know him since they say he's very famous, alive after you were kidnapped, drugged, operated on without consent, like invasive surgery. They took that Avatar hair-bending thing and did it to all your blood vessels, and put you in a situation you couldn't have possibly prevented where you are clearly the victim. The musician is of course also a victim, but thanks to the efforts of this Society of Music Lovers, he is now also a parasite. One thing that isn't talked about here is the motive of the famous violinist. Like, did he want this? Did he orchestrate it? He's unconscious now, so maybe he's unaware this was even going to happen. Anyway, you may not feel a responsibility to this guy because of how you were forced into this, but that doesn't necessarily mean it should be easy to disregard his life either. You have an opportunity to save someone or to actively decide not to. What's interesting is that this was written in 1971 as part of a defense of abortion, so certainly from a liberal Democrat perspective, but the language of the metaphor still suggests that they see the fetus as a human being who is alive, comparing it to an adult man who is terminally unconscious and needs help to live. Nowadays, you've got people who see it as a clump of cells to be flushed at the first opportunity, or people who want you to keep your rapist's baby in case it's the second coming of Christ. Personally, I think abortion is something that an empathetic person should absolutely struggle with emotionally because it is a big deal, and if you don't at least think twice about it, there's probably something wrong with you, and that's coming from someone who hates kids from the moment they step out of the womb. In this scenario, the morality is a bit less arguable because we're dealing with an already alive person who presumably wants to remain that way, and your decision to cut him loose would be, in no minced words, killing him. There's words people try to avoid in the abortion debate, like murder or kill, but here it's for sure killing. If you detach from him, you've killed him. Legally, it can still be distinct from murder because of the extenuating circumstances like your kidnapping and unelected surgery, but fundamentally you are choosing between saving a man and killing him, and everything else is just set dressing to soften the mental ramifications and help you live with your decision. Lament your fate to your heart's content, but a choice has to be made, and it's yours to make. The question, though, isn't really do you save or kill him, though. It's are you obligated to keep him alive or not? And I do think that taking everything into account, I would not consider saving him an obligation. Thompson, the author of this, says you are not obligated to keep the musician alive, not because he isn't a person with rights, but because he has no right to your body and the life-preserving functions it provides. She then continues that line of reasoning directly to fetuses, saying they don't have the right to another person's body and that they can be evicted at any time. She doesn't say you have a right to kill it, but you can stop it from using your body to stay alive, which she then treats as a separate distinction of it died from no longer being in your body, not from you directly killing it, and you didn't have to prevent this from happening. My question then becomes, Does this bitch know what an abortion is? I've seen ultrasound video of one. Motherfuckers aren't out here picking up fetuses by taxi and dropping them off outside the womb. They are going in there with cutting tools, dismembering them, and pulling out the fucking pieces. To so callously say shit like, you can evict the fetus if you don't want it, it has no right to your body, and you're not responsible for what happens next, like you're an evil landlord sending poor families to sleep on the streets, is so monstrous, especially from a political alignment that I frequently see publicly despising landlords. Thompson is misrepresenting what actually happens by making it seem like the decision and the death are separate, indirect events, and she pretends that all the abortion doctor is doing is telling the fetus to pack its bags when they are in fact slicing all of its limbs off as it clearly visually resists. I have seen a fetus react to being dismembered. Poorly. I think it really ruined its day, to be honest. I was watching it squirm and try to maneuver itself away from the thing cutting it, and I remember thinking, this fetus appears to be in distress. I can endorse a necessary abortion, but I cannot abide people acting like it's no big deal. I've seen how big a deal it is, and I didn't even know the fetus involved. It's probably the worst thing I've ever seen. I watched it in health class in high school, and I came in there ready to make jokes to myself, because you know I love dark humor, but very quickly I was like, oh. Abortion doctors should be in jail, not for murder, but for being fucking psychos to sign up for a job like that. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. Watch all my other videos and be scarred for life, and I'll see you guys next time.